guys, welcome back to our channel. We're Megan Moulds, and in today's video we want to give you all of our top tips and advice to make sure you have the best time travelling Vietnam.
We just finished a month travelling from the north to the south of Vietnam and had the most amazing time travelling through this beautiful country. We want to tell you about our trip, give you some top tips, let you know our itinerary, maybe some places that we didn't quite get to go to that we recommend, and yeah, get you ready for your trip.
Vietnam is the perfect country to backpack. There's two big cities, one at the north and one at the south, which means that you only have to travel one way. So most people fly into Ho Chi Minh City and fly out of Hanoi. That's the way that it's recommended to be done, purely because people say the north is better. We travelled north to south and still had a great month.
The idea behind that is that you start in Ho Chi Minh in the south, and as you work your way up, the views and the scenery, it sort of improves as you go on. Whereas if you sort of land in the north, you know, people think that you sort of have the best at the start and then it slightly gets worse as you go on. I mean, we didn't find this to be the case.
No, we still had a great time.
Yeah, everywhere we went in Vietnam was absolutely beautiful. So don't worry, either way, it's great. We'll start off by letting you know everything you need to know before you go. Firstly, you're going to need a visa. The easiest way to do this is the e-visa. So for us, we had a 30-day e-visa which cost $25. However, these visas are changing shortly. It's going to be changing to a 90-day visa, I think, for from people from the UK anyway. So
which is even better. We wish we had longer than 30 days.
Yeah, but yeah, just check that on your government website.
Make sure to print your visas as well. So in the fine print at the bottom, just say you need a printed copy of the document, and we were asked for that at the airport. So if in doubt, always have a hard copy.
The best time for you to visit would be between November and April. That's sort of the best combination of it being drier, not too hot. We travelled in June just because of the way that it worked for our schedule. Obviously out of the perfect time, but as you'll have seen if you've watched our videos from Vietnam, we had plenty of hot sunny days. The only issue is that it is hot.
Super humid.
As well.
We did like a 20-minute or 30-minute hike and we were absolutely dripping in sweat. Like, it was so hot and humid. But I mean, we can't complain, it didn't rain too much.
No, and that kind of leads us on to what you should pack. You should probably pack some breathable clothing, not like this t-shirt that I'm wearing now, which is cotton. You'd probably want to be wearing something that's like polyester, something that allows your sort of skin to breathe and you can sweat off. Just so you can keep cool, basically.
Even if you're travelling in peak season, it's still recommended to bring a good quality rain jacket or poncho, and also a rain cover for your backpack as well, just to protect all of your valuables. Another thing that we would recommend that you bring with you to Vietnam is a good quality sun cream and bug spray, just so you know that it works and you know all of the ingredients.
Yeah, it's much easier to get these things at home. Like Megan said, you can trust them if you've used these products before, especially. Just because the stuff out here in Southeast Asia, you might not be in a place where you've got good access or be able to find it, and also, yeah, it's just not so familiar. For example, we've seen on our travels some of the sun creams, for example, have whitening agents in to sort of lighten your skin, just because that's a bit of a beauty trend here. If you like to have paler skin, you know, you don't want to be using products like that.
One thing I would definitely recommend bringing is a good quality portable charger. You'll most likely be taking lots of really long buses, trains, however you want to travel, and a lot of these don't have ports for charging. So definitely bring a portable charger. I would also recommend not bringing AirPods, because often if I fell asleep on a bus wearing my AirPods, I'd wake up and they would be like down the side and I had to fish it out. So it was definitely an unneeded and unnecessary stress.
During our time in Vietnam, we saw a variety of different type plug sockets, depending on where you were in the country and the type of hotel or guest house that we were staying in. So we'd probably recommend you just bringing one of those universal plug adapters. That's what we've got, just because it makes it a hell of a lot easier sort of to make sure that you can charge your stuff. These aren't too expensive, you can get them on Amazon for about £15 or whatever.
If you are planning on renting and riding a scooter for your time in Vietnam, we highly recommend that you bring an international driver's permit. A lot of people we know and that we spoke to were pulled over by the police, particularly on the Ha Giang Loop. They're pretty hot on it. So it just covers you and you've got all the documents that you need. One more thing I'd also recommend that you bring is swimwear. So you may not think it, but Vietnam has really nice beaches. We also swam in quite a number of waterfalls, so bring some swimwear and a towel just in case.
When you arrive in the country, you'll have gone through immigration, got your bags, and one thing to get sorted straight off the bat is getting some money out from an ATM and getting your SIM card. We use the Agribank ATMs always to get money out. They charged a very small fee compared to other places that we'd seen in Southeast Asia to withdraw money. And the currency is dong, and I think the conversion was about 30,000 dong to a Great British pound.
Also, try not to worry, it's pretty easy. Most restaurants, if a dish is 30,000, for example, they will just label it as 30 on the menu. So it may seem confusing, but it's a lot simpler when you get there.
After you've got your money out from the ATM, you can then head over to one of the stores to get a SIM card. We were recommended to use Viettel just because they had the best coverage over the whole country. Especially if you're sort of heading up into the north in the mountains to do the Hajiang Loop, maybe you're heading north to Sapa nearer the Chinese border. The coverage will be a lot better there than if you were to use one of the alternatives. We found that we had coverage in everywhere that we went pretty much. Another top tip with SIM cards, if you're travelling in a couple like we are, is you can get one SIM card and have a large amount of data on it for like a 30-day plan, for example. And then you can just hotspot each other. That'll obviously half your cost. And I think we paid something like $10 for...
Yeah, it was really reasonable.
Yeah, $10 for a month, and I think it had like 50 gigabytes of data. That covered us both for the whole time there, just because as well, lots of the hotels and guest houses we stayed in, even the restaurants had pretty fast Wi-Fi, so you're never really using too much of your data, only if you're out and about.
Speaking of phones, we want to go through some apps that you should have downloaded on your phone ready for when you arrive in the country. So one that's always really handy is Grab. If you arrive at the airport, it means that you can order someone to pick you up and take you to where you need to be. It's basically the Southeast Asian version of Uber. Currency converter app, you can download these offline again. So if you're not quite sure how much things cost, just pop it in the app and it will tell you in your local currency.
Yeah, that's really useful when you're sort of new to the country and you're kind of getting used to what the conversion rate is.
Or if you just come from somewhere else and then you're like mixing them up in your head. Google Maps will be your best friend. You can download areas offline so that you're still able to navigate your way around the city if you don't yet have a SIM card. You can also check reviews for restaurants, hotels. It's great. Download Google Maps.
Alongside Google Maps, Google Translate, which we also talked about, is really great. Most people in Vietnam that we spoke to spoke really good English, but obviously you can't expect them to. And if you're ever in a situation where you need to speak to someone or just get a quick message across in Vietnamese, then Google Translate does a good job of that. You can obviously download the Vietnamese language offline. And yeah, it's handy just to have again, just in case. So some accommodation apps that will be useful for you. We mostly use booking.com to book our accommodation. We found that it was easy to do that throughout the whole of Vietnam. Also there's Agoda, Hostel World, and then Airbnb as well. We never really use Airbnb. Hostel World's probably the best place for you to book if you're sort of like a solo traveller into that sort of hostel vibe. And we found that the rates in Vietnam were really reasonable for private rooms with air conditioning, private bathrooms, etc. We weren't sort of paying more than £10 a night, so £5 each. And
also, I just wanted to mention a private ensuite bedroom for us at a guest house was cheaper than dorms. So we actually save money splitting a private bedroom. So even if you are travelling with a friend and you just want to escape some dorms for a while or have a few nights good sleep, then check booking.com because it will actually be cheaper. One top tip we always try to follow is looking for accommodation that has breakfast included. It means that you're waking up and you're starting your day on the right foot. You're not having to figure out where to eat straight away in the morning. We spent £4.65 each per night. That's our average. So as you can see, accommodation super affordable, as is the country to travel.
Yeah, we didn't stay anywhere that we sort of weren't really comfortable or didn't have air conditioning, I don't think. And everywhere that we stayed was really nice.
And the Wi-Fi was surprisingly good.
Next, we want to talk to you about transport. We found that Vietnam, of all the countries we've been to so far, was the absolute easiest to travel around. The guest house, hotel or hostel that you're staying at will have a list of all the different places that you can travel to from where you're staying. And this will be sort of like an itemised list with all prices. It's super easy to sort of find how much it costs. And we didn't find anyone was sort of like overcharging us compared to what we looked at online, which would be the average rate. And it was just super easy. They even arranged for someone to sort of pick you up from the hotel to then take you to the bus stop. It's probably all sort of like included in the price that they charge. But you know, it's not that expensive to travel around.
It's just easy, isn't it?
Everything being arranged for you makes it, again, an easier country to travel. And like what we said, I mean, it's perfect for like a beginner traveller who hasn't done a lot before, just because of that ease.
So Vietnam is absolutely huge. It's such a long country, so don't underestimate the length of some of these buses. We're on the bus for 12 hours at times, you know, sleeper buses when you're arriving at 4 a.m. To make sure you have the most comfortable experience, bring an eye mask, bring earplugs. It gets cold, so I would recommend wearing long trousers, maybe bringing a jumper. They do offer blankets on some of them, but again, it's not guaranteed. I'd also recommend maybe a neck pillow. You know how well you sleep on transport, so I would figure out what works for you.
Yeah, try and make it the most comfortable experience that you can.
A lot of the buses are very, very different as well in standard and comfort levels. So if there is a VIP option for maybe a couple of pounds more and you're going to be on the bus for 12 hours, upgrade. It's 100% worth it. And
also, we can't really speak on the trains in Vietnam. I mean, we planned to sort of take a train journey or two, but it never really worked into our schedule just because of the ease of booking buses at the hotels and guest houses where we stayed. But you can, again, for some of these longer journeys, book a train. These can go overnight again. And I think it probably offers like a similar level of comfort to what that you would expect from a bus. But yeah, do your own research on those and sort of just work out the way that you prefer to travel. I think most of the backpackers that we sort of spoke to and people travelling in general were just travelling on the buses just because it was easier to do so.
On the buses as well, you do have to take your shoes off when you get on and off them. So it might be worth just wearing some sandals that you can quickly slip off. And that way, if you're pulling into a gas station in the middle of the night and you want to run quickly to the toilet, you can just chuck them on. We touched on this previously, but if you are planning on renting a scooter, make sure you have your international driver's permit. I would also be inclined to only rent them if you've got experience, especially in the cities. You know, Vietnam is world renowned for motorbikes. They are everywhere. The cities and the streets are absolutely full of them. If you aren't a confident driver, I honestly don't recommend renting scooters in the cities. We did the Hai Van Pass one day and the 10-minute drive through the city was more stressful than the 5-hour drive we did along the coastal road.
It's just one of those things. You need to be sort of assertive and moving around in the traffic, alert, and yeah, if you don't know what you're doing and you're a bit of a beginner,
don't underestimate them.
Yeah, absolutely. Not that the people are sort of like dangerous drivers and stuff, it's just you just have to sort of drive assertively in order to, you know, for there to be room for you to be there.
Scooters were also pretty cheap. They're about 100,000 to rent for the day. Petrol, super cheap again. I mean, it is a great way to explore, particularly in the more rural areas where there is less traffic. We didn't have any issues at all. We didn't get pulled over, but again, just look out for it.
Yeah, just make sure you've got your international driver's permit and your driver's license from back home with you, and you shouldn't have any issues.
Last but not least for transport is Grab. I have touched on this very briefly. This app is absolutely great. You know, if you are a solo traveller, just jump on the back of someone's scooter and it takes you where you need to be.
Yeah, it's slightly more expensive in Vietnam compared to other countries that we might have been to. But again, it's just easy, you know, you can put in where you want to go and then you don't have to explain to a driver if it's like a pretty out of the way destination or somewhere that they might not have heard of, like a newer guest house that you're staying in that might have just recently opened. the driver will know exactly where you need to go, and you don't have to sort of like communicate across that language barrier about where you need to go.
You can also order food on Grab to your accommodation.
Yeah, very
Not
handy.
ashamed to say that we did this a couple of times, you know, when you're just not feeling up to going out, get the food brought to you.
One thing is that Grab probably won't be available in some of the more remote areas, you know, like in, say, Phong for example. They didn't have Grab, and, you know, why would they? The locals have no need for it, and there's not loads and loads of tourists there. It's mainly like the bigger cities, you know, Hanoi, Hoi An, etc.
The next topic that we want to talk about is food and drink. And honestly, the food in Vietnam was great. I think the more that we tried, the more we enjoyed it. We also think that Vietnam, particularly Hanoi in the north, is a really great place to do maybe a walk-in food tour, try lots of dishes and see what you like.
Yeah, it's a good way to sort of get into the culture of a new country. You know, someone will also recommend you all the new local dishes, so you won't have to sort of try it all out for yourself. But there are some foods that we tried we really enjoyed. So we had bun cha, that was really lovely. Of course, the famous pho. It didn't have as much sort of like flavour as what I would sort of enjoy.
I think the beef pho was better than the chicken pho.
Yeah, for sure. But it was still nice, and again, you know, it's just something that you've got to try.
Banh mi, of course, we had these multiple times.
Yeah, there's so many different sort of like flavours and sort of combinations that people go for. You know, there's like spicy ones, things that are a bit more Western style.
It's the Southeast Asian Subway, and they are great.
They are really good. You can sometimes find a little banh mi restaurant. You know, use Google Maps. If you type in banh mi, that'll be one that comes up. If you can find a little stall on the side of the road, might have loads of reviews. And yeah, they're really, really good. If you're sort of like stuck for a lunch or like a quick breakfast, anything, if you need some sort of like real tasty food quickly, banh mi's are just like a fail-safe.
We also ate lots of spring rolls, particularly on the group trip. So one thing to mention, if you are on a organised trip, the meals will pretty much be the same food every single meal. So we did a 4-day Ha Giang Loop tour, and every single meal we had some sort of chicken or beef dish, we had rice, we had vegetables. I mean, it was good food, but it was just a bit repetitive.
Yeah, you know, you might be sick of spring rolls by the sort of end of your trip. I think it was the same for the people that we spoke to that did the Ha Long Bay cruises as well. They had a similar meal then. Speaking of these trips, you'll probably be introduced to Happy Water. This is some sort of paint stripper style white rice wine.
Yeah, it is rice
or corn wine.
It's absolutely vile. It's
Yeah.
very fun though, and you do a nice little chant with everybody. So give it a try and see what you think. When in Vietnam, has to be done.
There's also quite a big coffee culture in Vietnam. Lots of little coffee shops selling sort of like a variety of different coffees as well. They have like weasel coffee, for example, where they feed weasels coffee beans, and then whatever they poop out, they then grind up to make the coffee. Funnily enough, we didn't give that a try, but apparently it's very good. And yeah, you know, try at your own will if you like. I think there's rat coffee as well.
There's egg coffee, which is particularly famous.
That is
Definitely
good
recommend
as well.
giving that one a try.
Yeah.
And then the Vietnamese drip style coffee as well.
Now we'll break down for you our 1 month itinerary in Vietnam, starting from north to south. But of course, if you're sort of planning on landing in Ho Chi Minh City, just reverse this and that'll be absolutely fine either way.
We'll also mention places that we didn't get the chance to visit that we really wanted to, purely because we wanted to slow down a little bit. If you are just travelling Vietnam, you know, go a bit quicker because
there's so many good places to fit in basically, and
yeah.
you know, you could spend sort of like 1 or 2 days in a place, whereas we might have spent 2 or 3 days in that place. Just because, like Megan said, you know, we wanted to slow down a little bit just because we're travelling for sort of a prolonged period of time.
First up, we landed into Hanoi. This was such a great city and we really loved our time there. We based ourselves in the Old Quarter, which I'd really recommend. It's walking distance to most attractions. We'll go through some things that you should do there and where to eat and drink. So Note Coffee was amazing. Get the red velvet cake. You will not regret it.
Yeah, that's why we tried the egg coffee as well.
We also loved bun cha. So at 74 Hung Quat. Make sure to go there. It's only open for lunch. It's a great place to do a water puppet show. We went to the Vietnamese Working Women's Museum, which was a great way to spend an afternoon. Walk around the lake, it's beautiful. It's not as crazy of a city as you may think. So just spend time walking around. There's so many markets. Just enjoy it.
It's a really nice place. It's one of our favourite cities that we've been to in Asia so far.
One other place that you should definitely go is Train Street. So they have recently changed the rules and police presence is quite high at the moment. So you have to be invited in by one of the cafe owners and buy some food or a drink. Now this was a lot easier than we expected. We thought it would be quite tricky. Check the train times online in the morning so you know exactly when to get there, but most trains pass in the evening. We got there for around 7 p.m. I think, and by 7:30 there was a train. But it was a super unique experience. What I would recommend doing is sort of walking towards the entrance, and then a bar or cafe owner will probably approach you and say, do you want to go to Train Street? Just follow them, and then before you know it, you'll be sat trackside.
While you're in Hanoi, it's very easy to sort yourself out with a couple of trips that you'll be doing afterwards. We used Buffalo Hostel, one of the sort of more famous hostels in the city, to book our Hajiang Loop tour. And afterwards as well, they'll sort out your transportation to where you want to go next. You could go up north to Sapa afterwards, or down to Halong Bay, maybe down to Ninh Binh or back to Hanoi. That's all an option available for you. But we'd recommend doing the 3 or 4 day Hajiang Loop tour, just depending on the amount of time that you have.
The Hajiang Loop tour was definitely the most expensive tour that we have done since travelling. Saying that, it was worth absolutely every single penny. It was so good and we can't recommend it enough. It really is worth the money.
Yeah, absolutely. It was probably our favourite thing that we did in Vietnam.
If you're wondering whether you should do the Hajiang Loop tour, then you can go check out our videos which show exactly what's included and what you can expect. After Hajiang, we then got a night bus all the way across to Cat Bar. I do just want to give a very brief honourable mention to Sapa. We really wanted to go, it's beautiful scenery and trekking there. You've got guest houses, homestays, but just for us, the weather wasn't great, so it wasn't worth it. It's up in the mountains, so as you can expect, weather is very changeable, and the time of year that we were there, the forecast was absolutely abysmal, but we were really sad to miss it out.
We headed to Cat Bar just because we wanted to do a bit more of a budget visit to Halong Bay versus the 2-night or 1-night cruises that you can do there. The cheaper cruises as well, they're a bit more of like a booze cruise type of vibe. Wasn't really something that we were looking for. So, it's not particularly budget friendly if you want one of those sort of like peaceful, relaxing cruise experiences. However, if you're ready to sort of spend a good amount of money, you can go on a cruise, that's really nice and peaceful, and they'll probably take you out to one of the quieter anchorages, if you like, out in the bay. Just something to weigh up, but we probably recommend spending your money on the Hajiang Loop versus a more expensive Halong Bay trip, just if you're on a budget and you're deciding which sort of big activity to do. We took a day trip basically from Cat Bar. If you're doing it on a weekday, it'll be less busy. This cost us $25 each and was well worth it, really. We were kind of a bit disappointed to see the amount of pollution and stuff in the water. We would have probably rathered paying a little bit more as like an environmental tax, if you like, just in the sense that that money would go towards the cleaning of the water and looking after the environment and stuff a bit more, compared to at times, we couldn't go in the water because there was like bits of polystyrene and rubbish and old unused fishing nets and stuff like that floating around in the water, which meant that it wasn't the pristine and beautiful experience all the time that we'd seen maybe online and stuff like that. So it was a bit of like an Instagram versus reality moment for us, and people that had been on the cruises and stuff that we spoke to as well had found the same. We'd still recommend going. It's such a beautiful place and the views and stuff are brilliant. Even after 4 days up in the mountains on the Hajiang Loop, we still really appreciated the views there.
After Cat Bar, we then got the bus down to Ninh Binh, and this was actually one of our favourite stops. It was so green. It's basically Halong Bay on land. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah.
Some of our favourite things that you should do there was take a boat trip. So we took
the Trang An
one, and we would recommend, because there's no forced tips. We also did the Hangmua Cave hike, which was beautiful. Go for sunset. Be prepared though, there's some very feisty parking people.
Yeah, so basically as you drive down the street towards the entrance, people will jump out of their restaurants and stuff in the middle of the road, sort of putting out their arms in like an X saying you can't drive any further. They basically just want you to stop and park in their guest house and pay them a guest house or restaurant and pay them a fee to do so. And then you have to walk, the 5 or 10 minutes down the rest of the road towards the entrance. If you sort of speed up and start beeping your horn at them, they're going to soon move out of the way, trust me. It's just one of those things, they're trying to get you in, and then probably, they might want you to get some food there afterwards as well, and they're trying to make money out of you. Just go straight to the end, to the entrance. You can park there as well. We were told that it was free to park, but when we turned up, there was also some of the sort of parking monitor mafia saying that we couldn't park in the main entrance and we had to park in there a bit there. They got pretty aggressive with us, and I was trying to drive past them and stuff like that, but they were literally stood there, and I didn't want to run someone over or start a fight. It was a small price that we had to pay to park. I wasn't going to cause any sort of extra hassle that we didn't need. And also, if you sort of go around these people and don't pay the parking fee,
you don't know what's going to happen to your bike in that
you might end up with your bike stolen.
Yeah, don't risk it. But also at Hangmua Cave, there's beautiful lotus fields, loads of photo spots before you get to the actual hike. So if you are going for sunset, leave early and give yourself plenty of time to explore everywhere there, because it's beautiful. Ninh is a great place to rent a scooter, and I would definitely recommend that you do that because it makes it so much easier to get around. The attractions are quite far away, depending on where you stay in. Banana Tree Hostel is the most popular one there by far, and there's a swimming pool, and I think you get breakfast included. So that's where most people stay.
Yeah, just because a lot of the night buses obviously arrive late at night as well, I think at 4 o'clock in the morning. And then people that we spoke to, they arrived at sort of that sort of time, but the Banana Tree Hostel had a place for them to stay and stuff like that. It was very easy for them. Our bus arrived in the middle of the day, so we had no problems with that. But just check if you are arriving in the middle of the night, that your guest house or hostel is going to have somewhere for you to stay.
If not, pay for an extra night.
Yeah.
Honestly, there's nothing worse than turning up at 3 o'clock in the morning and having nowhere to stay, especially if your guest house is locked.
Ugh.
Just pay the extra £4.
Yeah, we did this at the next place that we'll talk to you about. So after Ninh we headed off to Phong Nha, and this is where lots of people go and visit the various different caves. But we arrived on a night bus from Ninh at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. But we paid for that night's accommodation and spoke to the guest house before. They sort of left the door open for our room and then told us some instructions about which room we were staying. Then we could just sort of let ourselves in, got into bed and crashed and slept and sort of until 10 a.m. And that meant that they didn't have to get woken up in the middle of the night. It was very easy for us to get in and get off to sleep. It was a win-win, and the accommodation's not too expensive, so you should afford yourself that extra night just so that you don't have to wait until checking in at midday, for example, just because it's just not worth it. As
Morgan mentioned, in Phong Nha, it's a great place to go and have a look at some of the caves in the national park. There's so many different options available for all budgets. Now, Paradise Cave and
Dark Cave?
A Dark Cave are two of the most popular ones, and we did want to do them, but they were out of budget. And was it Paradise Cave?
Yeah, it was either Paradise Cave or Dark Cave that we saw some reviews on Google that had a weight limit for the zip lines and some of the activities, I think it was. So if you're over 90 kilograms like I am, you couldn't do the zip line and some of the activities. And if you're paying a large amount of money to do an attraction or experience, you're going to want to do all of the things it has to offer. And yeah, unfortunately, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I think the other cave that we wanted to go to as an alternative was a 45-minute drive there and then back, and it was 37 degrees. It was going to be a lot of effort for us, and we didn't really fancy it. So, but instead, there was plenty of stuff to do. We've just enjoyed renting the scooter and just driving around the area, similar
The
to
national park
Ninh
is
Bình.
absolutely beautiful. It's definitely worth a drive around. We also checked out the botanical gardens. There's some waterfalls there that you can do on a loop walk, and we really recommend the duck stop. Honestly, this was the funniest experience ever. Super cheap. It's run by a local family on their farm. You get a Vietnamese pancake, you get a drink. I think
It's 100k, wasn't it?
100,000.
So like almost
so cheap.
like £3. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
It's a bit of a drive out of the city, but again, you're driving through beautiful countryside. Honestly, it's so worth it. After Phong Nha, we got the bus to Hue. So some people skip this out, but I would recommend stopping there. You know, if you've got the time. There's the Imperial City, which we spent a day walking around, which is beautiful.
It's a little bit expensive. I think it was 210,000, so about £7. So, you know, you got to weigh that up if you're on a sort of a more tight budget. But it was nice to walk around and learn a bit more about Vietnamese culture and history.
There's also an abandoned water park you can go visit, but the main reason that people go to Hue is for the Hai Van Pass. If you don't know, the Hai Van Pass is an incredible coastal road, and we really recommend spending a day to drive along it. Most people either start in Hue or Hoi An, and it's the stretch of road between these two places. If you arrive in Hue and you want to do it straight away, what you can do is give a company your big bags, for example, and then they will take them to the other side, so you're not having to lug all of your baggage.
An alternative way is to get an easy rider to do this journey for you, and then you can put your bag on the back of the bike and wrap it up like in the Harjang Loop, and then they'll drive you. You can just sit back and enjoy the views.
But we enjoy going at our own pace and stopping off at some of the beautiful viewpoints, having drinks. Just choose what suits you again.
Yeah, so we actually did the Hai Van Pass from Da Nang, which is the next city along sort of between Hue and Hoi An, just because the Hai Van Pass itself is only a 21 kilometre, it's about a 1 hour drive sort of both sides. So from Da Nang we sort of drove it one way and then drove it back, which is another option for you. Just depends on the experience you want. Next, after Hue, we head down to Hoi An. We really liked Hoi An, and you know, there's plenty of stuff to do there. It's very touristy though. The beach there was also really nice. Like Megan said earlier, make sure to pack your swimwear, because the I can't remember what it was called.
Ang Bang Beach.
Ang Bang Beach, but it was a lovely, you know, long stretch of golden sand, and in the daytime, you know, it was nice and peaceful and stuff like that. But in the evenings, after the Vietnamese have sort of finished work and things like that, the beach becomes alive, and everybody's sat on the beach with their towels and getting sort of like noodles and rice dishes delivered from the restaurants onto their towel in the beach, and you know, it's packed out in the evening. But during the daytime it was really nice and peaceful.
Travelling in Vietnam is very tiring, so this beach day was honestly such a nice change of pace. I recommend having a day at the beach.
In order to visit the beach, a popular thing to do is to rent bicycles from the main town. You can do that at your guest house, and you can sort of cycle through the vegetable village, which is a nice thing to do to get to the beach. I think it takes about 10 or 15 minutes, but because it was so hot when we were there, we just decided to get a grab. I think it cost us like a couple of pounds one way, and then did the same on the way back. It was well worth it.
Hoi An has so many great restaurants. Make sure you go out at night, that you know, there's a night market, so many different food stalls, everything you could want, souvenirs. It's beautiful at night, you know, all of the river lights up with lanterns and boats. It's busy for sure, but it's so worth going down.
Another popular thing to do in Hoi An is to go on the basket boats. We had a great time, it was really fun, just an interesting and unique experience again.
It's not as relaxing as you might think either.
No, it really isn't. You know, there's lots of people sort of spinning people around in boats, there's like a karaoke station, all sorts is going on. It's pretty crazy, and we recommend going early in the morning because it gets quite busy later in the day, we were told. But I mean, our tour cost 115,000 dong per person, and yeah, we thought that was really reasonable. You can also combine this with a cooking class and do like a half-day tour. You can do like full-day tours. It just really depends on what you want to do, I think.
You and your budget, whatever suits you. Hoi An was actually our last stop. From there, we decided to get the bus to Da Nang, and then we flew to our next country of Cambodia from the airport. Most people, however, they'll get either very long buses or trains, or they'll fly down south to Dalat. So obviously we didn't visit Dalat, so I'll just briefly mention some of the things there that you should do if you are considering visiting. There's the Alpine roller coaster, which looks super fun. There's loads of lakes, pagodas. You know, it does look great, it just didn't fit into our itinerary.
Yeah, and also that I think there's a lot of hiking that you can do as well. But again, at that time of year, where we went in June, hiking, if it's sort of like a long day hike, for example, really isn't an option when it's 37 degrees.
Another stop briefly before we get to Ho Chi Minh is the sand dunes at Mui Ni. Probably awful pronunciation. You only really need a day here. You go out, you do some sandboarding, explore the sand dunes basically. So the last stop most likely on your trip is Ho Chi Minh City. You'll either end or start here. One of the main tourist attractions is the Chu Chi tunnels, where you go and you see the tunnels that the Vietnamese people used during the war. You know, it's a great place to learn a bit more information, but from what I've seen, it's very geared towards tourists.
You can also take a boat trip out on the Mekong River Delta. We are recommended this as sort of like a nice thing to do for a day as well.
And last but not least for Ho Chi Minh, a few more things that you should definitely check out when you're there. There's the Notre Dame Cathedral, there's lots of pagodas, there's the sky deck for really great views, and there's the War Museum to find out lots more information.
Vietnam's also a country where a 2-week itinerary would also be a great way to explore. We'd probably recommend spending the majority of the time in the north and central areas, just because that's what we enjoyed the most, and you can sort of like get around quickly if you need to, making the most of the night buses, for example, to sort of minimise wasted time during the days. You might be quite tired after these 2 weeks, but you know, it's possible to see some great sights in the country doing this.
You can sleep when you're home. If you've only got 2 weeks, make the most of it. Some final thoughts as we come to the end of this video. Vietnam is such a backpacker-friendly country to explore. It's super safe. We definitely recommend for solo travellers because it's easy to travel, it's cheap, it's super sociable, especially if you are booking onto those group trips, and all of the locals are so friendly.
Yep, the food's good, the nightlife's good. You know, we don't have a bad word to say about Vietnam, really.
The nature is unmatched as well.
Yeah, we really enjoyed the views, especially in the north and on the Ha Giang Loop. We hadn't seen anything like it.
So we really hope you've enjoyed this video, and we really hope that it's been useful in planning your trip for Vietnam. If you do have any questions at all, then drop them below in the comments. We'd love to help you out and make sure that you have the best time.
If you are interested in seeing any of the places that we've talked about as well, we have our full YouTube series for Vietnam available on the channel, and you can head over to our Instagram at Megan Morg to see some of the reels and posts that Meg's been working on. I think we've got a little travel guide on there as well if you ever need to refer back to anything in writing. But yeah, we really hope this has been helpful for you, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.